A former ballerina is on trial, accused of murdering her husband.
But you'll see that this was a custody battle that this mother was going to win at all costs. And the cost was the life of Doug Benefield. And that is murder.
Douglas Benefield was a violent abuser. Ashley Benefield's efforts to placate him was absolutely consistent with what abused women do, especially when a child is involved, and that Ashley's result and resource to deadly force was absolutely justified under the circumstances.
Ashley Benefield is on trial in Florida, charged with second-degree murder for the 2020 shooting death of her husband, Doug Benefield. The two met in 2016 in South Carolina during a campaign fundraiser and quickly married shortly after, less than 2 weeks after they met. However, troubling allegations began to fly as Ashley accused her husband of being abusive during their marriage. Prosecutors argued Doug's death stemmed from a contentious custody battle over the couple's daughter, but said Doug did everything he could to keep his marriage and their family together. But 4 years into their marriage, Ashley would fire off 4 rounds, shooting Doug and ending his life. During Ashley's trial, the state argued she shot her husband in cold blood.
Now, Doug never moves in with Ashley. He keeps a separate residence. But after almost a year, so around August of 2019, Ashley just stops talking to him. Just stops. And that's about the time Doug files for divorce. He finally says, okay, we're getting a divorce. Then what you'll hear is that the defendant started a whole new set of complaints. You will hear that she was involved in 5 different complaints, all revolving not around her this time, but about the child. Because now Doug has visitation with the child, so now these allegations are that Doug's abusing the child, and the allegations are that Doug's abusing the child. What you'll hear is that not one of these charges was ever prosecuted. Not one of these charges ever left law enforcement. So the defendant now has tried these 5 complaints after Doug filed for a divorce. Law enforcement's not helping her. No one has said that Doug cannot see this child, so there's still visitation going on. And in this meeting of all these people, it was decided that Doug and Ashley Benefield will go for a psychological evaluation. So they do. And they go to Dr. Broder, and Dr. Broder does a very extensive psychological evaluation. And he meets with them together. He meets with them separately. He meets with them with the child, whose name is Emerson, by the way. She's a little girl. And at the time of the shooting, she was about not yet 2 years old. During this evaluation, and what you'll hear from Dr. Broder, is that Ashley Benefield acted very different when she was with Doug and when she was not with Doug. When she was with Doug, it was, we're moving to Maryland, we're going to work on our relationship, we're going to try and make this family work. When she's not with Doug, she's saying, no way, no how, I do not want this, I don't want to reconcile with him. And to Doug's knowledge, all he's hearing is, I want to reconcile. So that's what he knows. That report was coming out at that hearing on September 30th, 2020. So September 30th, 2020, Ashley knew the ruse was up. Now, there had to be a request from both sides, the husband and the wife, to release this psychological report. And at one point before the hearing, Ashley Benefield tried to get Doug to drop that so the report would not get out, would not be released. Doug refused. So that report was coming out on the 30th, and on the 27th, she kills him and claims self-defense. Now, you're probably going to hear a lot of information about Doug Benefield. Probably some negative things, not so nice things. I would just ask you to remember who's saying them and why. Just because someone speaks words does not make it true. So use your common sense as you go through this trial. This is a long story with a lot of information, but you'll see that this was a custody battle that this mother was going to win at all costs. And the cost was the life of Doug Benefield. And that is murder. Thank you.
While Ashley Benefield didn't deny she shot and killed her husband, her defense team argues she shot him in self-defense.
So how does that day's events unfold? What happens that results in us all assembling here this morning? It starts, ladies and gentlemen, with Doug Benefield once again seeking control. He is simmering when he arrives at Ashley's home on that afternoon. Why is he simmering? He's on a slow boil, actually, because he knows that Ashley's moving. He knows that this relationship is over. And immediately there's a discussion about how they should pack the belongings, with Ashley taking the position that her belongings should be packed last. Why? Because Ashley's things are going to be unloaded first, and Doug will then continue on to wherever it is that he was going to reside. So, this is the most vulnerable time for a domestic violence victim, when the abuser recognizes that he's about to lose her. So what's his response to this? All right, classic tactics of an abuser, they are threats and intimidation on this afternoon as the two of them are trying to pack this U-Haul and this pod. In an effort to avoid confrontation with him, Ashley says after a short while, gee, I'm really pretty exhausted. Why don't we stop for the day? We can finish tomorrow. Doug ignores it. His response is to grow increasingly aggressive and hostile. Not once, but twice, Doug body checks Ashley. And by body check, I mean he passes her in a hallway, slams his shoulder into her shoulder, almost knocking her over. That's not enough. The next thing is, as they're passing in a hallway, he's carrying a cardboard box. He jams the cardboard box into Ashley's side, which leaves scratches that the police photographer took. Again, now fearing for her safety because she sees how he is escalating in his behavior, she tries to persuade him, look, let's finish for the day. It's getting late. I'm tired. No go. Instead, Doug bellows, I know what you're doing. You're trying to get me to leave. I'm your husband, and I can spend the night if I want to. Well, that was enough for Ashley. She heads for the front door of the house to leave. Doug chases up to her, grabs her by the arm or hand, and spins her around so that his back is to the front door, blocking her from leaving. And he yells right in her face, where do you think you're going? Ashley, desperate at this point, Doug yells, you can't leave me. Ashley somehow finds the strength to summon up the nerve to say, I am done. You need to leave now. She commands him to leave the home. Terrified, while in his grasp, because he spun her around, his response is to smack her upside the head. And you'll see the pictures of her swollen face and her eye. and he yells, "I am not done," fearing for her life, as this was the first time that he had actually struck her. Up till then, it was always threats and intimidation. As intimidating as firing a gun may be to get you to stop speaking, he had never actually hit her. He'd pushed her. This time he struck her. Terrified after this, fearing for her life, she heads for her bedroom where she has a firearm. She gets to the firearm. She turns around. She orders Doug to stop. When she looks up, he's in the doorway. Instead of seeing the gun and leaving, Doug gets into this warrior pose with his arms moving purposely and advances. At that point, petrified, she fires, believing that if he gets a hold of her, she will be either seriously injured or killed. To her horror, after firing, he continues to advance. She absolutely panics. She tries to get away and backs to the side to create more distance between them, but there is no place left for her to go in this small bedroom. At that point, in utter panic, she keeps firing the gun. She sees Doug's legs go up in the air, almost as if he was running and slipped, and he falls backwards. Instinctively, she flees the house and heads next door to John Sant's house. He's a neighbor.
The first witness called by the state was Tommy Benefield Jr., Doug's cousin, who testified about a time when he saw Doug and Ashley together. He said they appeared to be a loving couple.
Throughout the time that you saw Doug and Ashley together, how did Doug act?
In particular on the opening night and all the way through their relationship. Opening night, totally in love, both of them in love with each other. Doug was always very respectful. He was very, very respectful with her in front of me, both that initial night and then the next weekend, I believe in May, that I spent down in Sarasota, Bradenton with them. Every time he was respectful of her. They were in love. They never showed anything in front of me other than caring for each other.
That was going to be my next question. So did you see anything other than that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
But then the defense quickly pointed out Doug's cousin previously supported Ashley before Doug's death when she planned on leaving him.
We've established that you were aware that Ashley left Doug in September of 2017.
Yes, sir.
And we've also established that following that, you expressed your support of her.
Yes, sir.
All right, now I want to direct your attention specifically to the month of November of 2017. Were you aware of a domestic violence injunction that Ms. Benefield sought and obtained from South Carolina court?
Yes, sir, at that time.
Did you support Ms. Benefield in November of 2017 following the issuance of a domestic violence injunction?
Not specifically about that, sir.
Do you recall expressing your support on Saturday, November 4th, 2017?
I don't remember that specifically, sir.
Doug's daughter, Ava Benefield, then took the stand as a witness for the state. For Ava, her father's death wasn't her first tragic loss, as she lost her mother 9 months prior to Doug and Ashley meeting. She testified that she didn't find out about Ashley until her father and Ashley had married, but said the two appeared lovey-dovey, and she never saw her father become physically violent toward her stepmother.
How was their relationship together that you saw?
They were just with each other all the time. It was very lovey-dovey. They were very touchy-feely, PDA. Any event with school or extracurricular that I was in, they were together. They'd go grocery shopping together, go travel together. They never left each other's side.
Okay. And how did you and Ashley get along?
It was friendly at first.
Okay. You said at first.
Yes.
And then what happened?
Over time, she tried to reprimand me a little bit more and kind of step into a motherly role, and I did not like that because it was so short after my mom passed away.
Whenever she had a disagreement with you, how would she act?
It was almost temper tantrum like. It was
Objection. Impermissible character evidence.
I'm sorry.
Character evidence.
Overruled.
Okay, so it was temper tantrum like, and you didn't sound like you were finished. What were you saying?
she would go directly to my dad and tell him that I wasn't obeying.
Okay. And did her reactions to you seem to be on the level of the situation, or did she get more angry at the situation?
Usually they were overreactions over small things.
Okay. And how about interactions with your dad? Did you ever hear her argue with your father?
I heard her strongly voice her opinions over and over and over again.
Okay. Now, you said over and over and over again. Is that something that you heard on a regular basis, or something you only heard once?
It was on a regular basis.
Okay. And when she was voicing her opinions to your father, was he ever reacting to that?
No, he would just sit quietly and listen.
Did you ever see them fight?
No,
Verbally fight?
no,
Okay. Did you ever see them physically fight?
no.
How often would you say that Ashley and your father would disagree within your hearing?
Never.
Okay. You said if Ashley was trying to get her point across, that she would go on and on about that?
Yes.
Okay. So you don't term that as a disagreement?
No.
Okay. What would you term that as?
My dad just listened to her voice her concerns.
Okay. Did you ever hear your dad at any time yell at her?
No.
Did you ever hear your dad do something or say something that was controlling to her?
No.
Did you ever see or hear your dad threaten her?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Did you ever see or hear your dad threaten her?
No.
Did you ever see or hear your dad get physical with her?
No.
During their 4-year relationship, Ashley's defense attorney said Doug fired a gun into the ceiling of the couple's kitchen. Under cross-examination by Ashley's defense attorney, Ava testified she did see the bullet hole that was later patched up by her father.
You told us there was a hole in the ceiling of your kitchen.
Yes.
Was that hole in the ceiling of your kitchen, can you describe it?
It was small.
Small, kind of round?
Yes.
Consistent with an object?
Let me finish the question.
Consistent with an object the size of a bullet?
Yes.
Overruled.
Were there holes in the drywall of your home?
There was one.
Was it from the closet
No.
outside to the drywall?
No.
Where was it?
It was near the kitchen.
Did you know how it got there?
Yes.
Was the hole consistent with the size of a fist?
Yes.
Was that hole patched?
Eventually.
Who patched it?
My father.
Were you aware that a domestic violence injunction had been issued by the court in South Carolina?
No.
Was your dad fixated with Ashley?
I think they were fixated with each other.
Did you express at any time that your dad, your words, not mine, was fixated with Ashley?
I might have.
The word that you had used to refer to your dad's interest in Ashley was what?
When are you referencing?
In general. Was the word fixated? Was that the word you used?
Yes.
That's all.
After the fatal shooting, Ashley ran to a neighbor's home, seemingly shaken by what happened. That neighbor was a man named John Sant. While being questioned by the state, he recalled Ashley's demeanor when she ran over to his home.
And what did Ashley say when you opened the door?
As soon as I opened the door, before I could say anything, she said, "He attacked me."
And is that all she said?
At that point, I said, "Who?" And he said, "Doug. He attacked me, and I shot him."
Is that all she said to you?
That's all she said.
Did she have a weapon with her?
I didn't see it at that point.
Did you see a weapon eventually?
Eventually,
Where was that weapon?
it was laying down just to the right of my door where I couldn't see it, where I was standing at that point.
And when did you see that weapon?
Well, after she said, "And I shot him," I said, "Well, then you better come in." And I moved to the left to let her in, and that's when I noticed it lying there on the ground.
Okay. And what was it?
It was a handgun.
What did you do with that handgun?
Once I got her in the house, I told her, I said, "I can't leave that out there." No, I don't know whether she responded or not, but then I went out, reached down, picked it up by the trigger guard, brought it back in the house, and set it down inside the door.
Okay. And when you say inside the door, was that on the floor or was there a table?
It was on the floor.
On the floor. What was Ashley's mood when she was there?
I'm sorry, Ashley's what?
Ashley's mood?
Terrified.
Okay. Was she, do you remember her crying?
I didn't remember her crying until I was listening to those tapes, and then it sounded like she was crying, but she just couldn't get any words out after that last statement about where her mother and daughter were. That was really the last coherent amount, any words that ever came out of her mouth that I could understand. At that point, it was just stuttering and shaking and sobbing.
Okay. So you did not have any other conversations with her, meaningful conversations with her after that?
No, the rest of the conversation was a 911 operator.
Ashley Benefield became visibly emotional when the 911 call was played in court. Sant can be heard in the 911 call comforting Ashley as she cries in the background.
This is Gabby. How can I help you? Hey, Gabby, it's Karen. On the 11327, I have John Singer on the phone. He's saying the neighbor came over, female neighbor. It was a domestic. She shot her husband. Okay. All right, I'm going to get that on the screen, okay? Okay. Which screen is this her at? The 11327 White Rock Terrace. Okay.
That's my address.
That's your address? What's her address? Where this occurred at?
Her address is right next to, I believe it's 11331.
She's on the corner? Okay.
Yes, ma'am, on the corner. She's with me now, quite upset. The weapon is here.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go over and look at anything, or just wait for the police?
No, I want you to just wait for the police, okay?
All right, if you could just get them here quick. She came in, she was quite hysterical. I didn't know who was banging on my door. Said that he attacked her, and she shot him.
Okay. I'm just getting that all on the screen, okay?
Okay. I know, honey. Come on. I know. Go ahead, ma'am.
Where is the gun? Is it with her, or is it just...
I have it right here, ma'am. It's sitting on the floor inside the door. My door's locked, so in case he isn't, he can't get up. I'm also armed if he does come over and try to harm her, just so everybody knows.
Okay.
At any time during this interaction with Ashley, did she appear to have any injuries?
No.
Okay. Did you see any blood on her?
No.
Okay. Did she complain of any injuries?
No.
How about her clothing? Did you notice, was her clothing ripped or anything wrong with her clothing?
Not that I noticed, no.
Okay. And eventually, did the police come to your house?
And talk to me?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
And did they recover that firearm that she had brought over that you left?
They did it while I was outside, because when I went back in, it was gone.
Okay.
I assumed they took it.
Okay. So maybe you didn't see them take it, but
No.
it was gone.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions. The defense may have some questions for you.
okay.
Within another shocking detail, Sant testified under cross-examination he noticed something unusual with the firearm.
First thing I noticed is when I saw it, there was a spent cartridge stuck between the slide and the entrance to the chamber.
A spent cartridge, meaning a fired cartridge?
I'm sorry, yes, it was empty.
Okay, and it was stuck where?
It was stuck between the slide, front end of the slide, and the back end of the chamber entrance.
The slide on the gun that
Right.
cocks it and loads another bullet into the chamber?
Correct.
So could we agree that the weapon was jammed?
The weapon had been misfired or mishandled.
Okay.
It wasn't held far, and it didn't eject it far
Yeah.
enough.
On day 2 of the trial, Ashley's mother took the stand as a witness for the state. She testified under direct her daughter previously owned 2 firearms.
Was there a time when Ashley moved in with you when she was pregnant?
Yes.
Okay. And she was married at the time, but it was just Ashley that moved in?
Yeah, he brought her down.
Okay.
And yes, and yeah,
And she moved in with you?
yeah. He told me I needed to take care of her. He dropped her off.
Okay. So she stayed with you from that time on, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And does Ashley have a concealed weapons permit?
Yes.
Does she own firearms?
She doesn't now, no.
Did she own firearms then?
Yes.
Okay. How many?
2, I think. Yeah, 2.
Did she ever go to the firing range or anything?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. How frequently would she go?
Well, we did all the courses to get the concealed carry, and I don't remember.
Okay. And very shortly before the shooting, she went to the shooting range with your neighbor, correct, John Fantz?
I don't think that was close to that time, no.
So it may not have been close in time, but they have gone together? Ashley and John Sands?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Alicia Byers testified she and her daughter are very close, and they were planning to move to Maryland around the time of Doug's murder. On the night of the shooting, Doug was over at Ashley's home helping her pack.
On the date of the shooting, what time did Doug get to your house? Do you remember?
No, I mean, it was, I can guess, maybe like 5 or something. I don't know.
So it was still light out?
Oh, yeah.
And maybe in the afternoon sometime?
Yeah, I don't clearly know.
Okay. So when he showed up, what did you do? Did you stay there or leave?
I was leaving when he pulled up.
And where did you go?
We went to the park.
Okay. And when you say we, who is we?
Oh, Emerson and I.
Okay.
Yes.
So just you and Emerson, and
Yes.
how old was she at the time?
So I guess 2, maybe. Yeah.
Approximately.
Yeah.
And at the house, was it just Doug and Ashley then
Yes.
when you left? And you've obviously been in contact with your daughter almost every day since the shooting, correct?
Leading. No, I will roll.
You've been in contact with her basically every day, correct?
Not
the-
initially, no.
For the last several years, you've been in contact with her every day.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I
And
don't know how to, okay, yeah.
did she ever, during any of these conversations, tell you what happened when she had to shoot Doug?
Never.
When you came back from the park, I'm assuming she was already in the squad car or she was already with law enforcement?
I had no idea where she was.
I'll sustain.
Okay. So at the time that the shooting happened, she didn't tell you what happened,
No.
correct?
We've never talked about it.
And
No, overruled.
to this day, you've never talked about it.
No.
The state claims the battle over the custody of Ashley and Doug's daughter played into the alleged motive for murder. Next, Doug's former attorney, Stephanie Murphy, was called to the stand. Murphy would give more insight to jurors on the legal battles between the couple leading up to Doug's death.
When was the child born?
Well, the child was born early. She was born on March 19th, I believe, is when she was finally born.
And you said early. How many weeks early was that?
Well, the child was originally scheduled, or her due date was April 8th. So I think,
Sustained.
So you said you never received a response
not from Ms. Benefield.
from Ms. Benefield about the letter.
Correct.
And to your knowledge, did Doug ever receive a response to that letter?
To my knowledge, he did not receive any response from Ms. Benefield or anyone on her behalf.
Okay. And I think you might have said this, but the child was born on what day?
She was born on the 19th of March.
Okay. And at the time the child was born, did you or Doug know that the child was born?
No, gosh, we didn't know for a good 5 or 6 weeks after she was born.
Okay. And how did you find out that the child was born?
I actually found out because I had been monitoring the docket for Manatee County court system, just because there had been no response. And so on May 6th, I saw that Ms. Benefield had filed a petition for protection against domestic violence on, I think it was April 23rd. So about 2 weeks prior to me finding out, she had filed the petition. And in that filing, there was, she identified the birth date of the child, as well as I think the child's name, which is the first time we learned about that too.
You said she filed a petition for, what did you call it?
It's a petition for protection against domestic violence. So it's an injunction. A lot of people refer to it as a restraining order, but it wasn't granted as an injunction at the time.
Okay. So when, just for knowledge of people that may not know, when someone does a request for an injunction, what is sort of the procedure that it needs to go through?
So a person who files a petition for an injunction, they file it at the courthouse in the clerk's office, and then that gets sent up to the judge, usually a family law judge who's just in charge of injunctions that day. And then the judge has 3 options, I believe. One is just to deny it completely. The second option is to grant a temporary injunction, but then there's a follow-up or a return hearing.
I'll overrule.
And then the third option is what happened in this particular case, is that the judge denied the petition as a temporary injunction, so there wasn't enough evidence in the petition to warrant a temporary injunction, but a hearing was set to review it.
Okay. And when was that hearing set approximately, to your knowledge?
I believe it was originally set for May 8th, but Ms. Benefield made a request to continue that hearing.
Okay, so it was then continued?
It was.
And to your knowledge, what was their path forward from that point?
The path that went into place was they were reconciling and moving to Maryland.
Speculation as to what the path forward was.
And so when we were leading up to the week that he was killed, it was agreed upon that they were going to result in an impasse of the mediation because they were reconciling, and then the hearing on the 30th, the week after, was only going to be to release a psychological evaluation report,
Okay.
and they were going to pursue the move to Maryland.
Okay. So ultimately, the only thing that was supposed to happen at this hearing on September 30th was the release of the psychological event.
That was it.
That was it. Okay. And do you recall what day of the week that was, September 30th?
I believe it was Wednesday, so the mediation was a Thursday prior to the killing, and then the hearing was supposed to be Wednesday the 30th.
When it was time for the defense's line of questioning, Murphy testified she believed Ashley killed Doug ahead of a court hearing where a report was supposed to be released about her psychological evaluation.
Ms. Murphy, we've pretty much established that the homicide occurred on September 27th of 2020, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. And then you've told us here today that Dr. Broder's report was set to be released 3 days later on September 30th. Is that correct?
Yes.
The inference by you in by the state's theory is that Ms. Benefield then killed Mr. Benefield to stop the release of Dr. Broder's report.
Are you asking if that's what I believe or if that's what the state's inference is?
Well, you've discussed the matter with Ms. O'Donnell, have you not?
I have, yes. Yes, I have.
And in fact, she's provided you with all the documents in the case, hasn't she?
I don't know if she's provided me with everything, but I have gotten a lot of documents in the case.
By direct conversations with Ms. O'Donnell.
Yes, I did a
Okay.
discovery request.
And so is the implication not that, as you testified before the jury earlier, Ms. Benefield shot and killed Mr. Benefield because of this report that was coming out by Dr. Broder 3 days later?
Absolutely, I have no doubt.
Okay, so that's the theory of the homicide.
Right.
All right. You knew you were coming to court to testify before the jury in a homicide case.
badgering.
Go ahead and answer your question.
That the incentive for Miss Benefield to kill her husband was the release of this report on the 30th. You don't have anything to support that other than what you've told us?
Sustained.
That's all.
The trial of Ashley Benefield will continue as the state has a few more witnesses to call before it's the defense's turn. Ultimately, the jury will have to consider whether or not Douglas Benefield was killed in cold-blooded murder or in self-defense. At this time, it's unclear if Ashley Benefield will take the stand in her own defense. Her trial is slated to continue until the end of next week. And if she's convicted, she faces a minimum of 25 years behind bars or a maximum sentence of life in prison. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.